Hello friends, welcome back to a new video, and in this video we will go through the interview questions for an Azure DevOps engineer or administrator. And as you know, this is one of the demanding skill in the industry as of now. So let's start. What is the role of an Azure DevOps engineer? Now, so the role of an Azure DevOps engineer is vital in modern software development, ensuring that applications are developed, tested, and deployed in a seamless, automated, and reliable manner. By leveraging Azure's suite of tools and services, DevOps engineers streamline the software delivery process, enhance collaboration, and contribute to the overall efficiency and agility of the development lifecycle. Now we will go to the next slide and see what type of questions we can expect from an interviewer for this role. So it will first start with the technical questions, and second it will move to scenario based questions, and then it would be few of behavioral questions. Let's start with the technical set of questions. So the first question could be, what is Azure DevOps and what are its key components? In our response, Azure DevOps is a suite of development tools and services provided by Microsoft to support the entire software development lifecycle. The key components are Azure boards, work tracking with Kanban board, backlogs, team dashboards, and custom reporting, Azure repos, source control with Git repositories or Team Foundation Versions Control, TFVC. Azure Pipelines, CI CD pipelines to build, test, and deploy applications. Azure Test Plans, automated and manual testing tools. Azure Interfaces, sorry, my bad. Azure Artifacts, package management for Manven, NPM, NuGet, and more. Next question. How do you implement CI/CD in Azure DevOps? The response, there are two options. So one is CI, continuous integration, and CD. In continuous integration, what we will do is set up a repository in Azure Repo, create a build pipeline in Azure Pipelines to automatically trigger build upon code commit. This includes defining the tasks such as compiling code, running tests, and creating build artifacts. Now, the CD part, the continuous deployment. Create a release pipeline in Azure Pipelines to deploy build artifacts to various environments, example dev, QA, and production. Define stages and tasks within the release pipeline for deploying applications, running integrations tests, and managing approval and gates. Moving to the next question. What are Azure pipelines and how do they support multiple environments? Azure Pipeline is a CI/CD service that builds, tests, and deploys code to any platform and cloud. Now, how it will support multiple environments? So, define multiple stages in a pipeline, example dev environment, for QA environment, staging environment, and production environment. So, based on the environments, we will have multiple stages in the pipeline. Each stage can have its own set of tasks, such as deploying to a specific environment, running environment specific test, or performing configuration management. So we can build the stage based on the, or we can build the task based on the environment we want to deploy or want to test. Use variables and variable groups to manage environment specific settings. Implement approval gates to control the promotion of build between stages. Next question. How do you manage version control with Azure repos? Azure repos supports Git and TFVC for version control. How Git works? It uses branching strategies, example feature branches, release branches to manage parallel environment. Create pull request for code reviews and merge changes to the main branch. Utilize Git hooks and policies to enforce best practices such as requiring code reviews or successful build before merging. Next, TFVC. It uses a centralized version control system with check-ins and checkouts. Manage branches and merges through Azure DevOps interface. Moving on to the next question. What are Azure artifacts and how do you use them? The response would be Azure Artifacts is a package management service that supports various packages types. Few examples are npm, nutgut, and maven. Now how it is being used. So create feeds to host packages, publish build artifacts, example libraries, dependencies to Azure Artifacts during the build process, consume packages in builds and release by referencing the artifacts feeds, use retention policies to manage storage and clean up old packages. Moving on. How do you manage permissions and access control in Azure DevOps? Azure DevOps security groups. Use built-in and custom security groups to manage permissions. Access levels. Assign appropriate access levels, basic stakeholders, Visual Studio subscriber based on user roles. Permissions interface. Understand and configure permissions interface for projects, repositories, pipelines, and other resources. Service connections. Securely manage service connections and ensure only authorized users have access to critical infrastructure. Now, the next one. What are service hooks in Azure DevOps and how do you configure them? So, service hooks. What is service hook? Enable integration between external services by triggering events based on activities in Azure DevOps, example, code commit, build completions. Configuration, how do we configure it? Navigate to the project settings, select service hook and choose the service to integrate with. Configure triggers and actions for the selected service. Validate that and test the integrations to ensure it works as expected. Next one. How do you monitor and maintain Azure DevOps pipeline? So the first way is pipeline analytics. Use built-in analytics to monitor pipeline performance and identify bottlenecks. Next, log and alerts. Configure build and release logs for troubleshooting. Set up alerts for failed builds and release. Retention policies. Implement retention policies to manage the storage of build and release artifacts. Automations. Automate maintenance tasks such as cleaning up old pipelines and artifacts using scheduled tasks or scripts. Moving to the next question. What are the steps to secure Azure DevOps environment? The first one, role-based access control RBAC. Implement RBAC to ensure users have the minimum necessary permissions. Audit log. Enable and review audit logs to track changes and access to resources. MFA, multi-factor authentication. Require MFA for all users. Secure pipelines. Use secure variables and secrets management, example Azure keywords in pipelines. Compliance. Regularly review and update security policies to compile with organizations and regulatory requirements. Now, we will move to a next section, which is scenario based questions. The first question in that section is describe how you would set up a pipeline to deploy a web application to Azure App Services. Response. Set up Azure repo. Store the web application code in an Azure repository. Create a build pipeline. Define tasks to restore dependencies, build the application and run test. Publish build artifacts, example, compiled binaries, configuration files. Next is SSH access. Verify the key pair and correct user for SSH access. Define stage for different environment, example dev, staging, production. Add task to deploy artifacts to Azure App Services using the use Azure App Services deploy task. Configure environment specific settings, example connection settings, app settings. Implement approval gates for manual intervention if needed. The next question. How do you ensure the quality of code before deployment in Azure DevOps? Code review. Use pull requests to enforce code reviews before merging changes. Automated testing. Integrate unit test, integration test, and UI test in the CI pipelines. Static code analysis. Use code like SonarQube or integration code analysis task to detect code smell and security vulnerabilities. Policies. Implement branch policies to require successful build and test passes before merging. Next scenario based question is how would you handle secrets and sensitive information in your Azure DevOps pipeline? Azure Key Vaults. Store secrets, keys, and certificates securely in Azure Key Vaults. Pipeline variable. Use secret variable in Azure pipeline to securely store sensitive information. Link these variables to key vaults secrets when possible. Secure files. Store sensitive files securely and reference them in pipeline. Access control. Restrict access to pipeline keywords and variable groups to authorized person only. Next, describe how you would migrate an existing CI/CD setup from another tool to Azure DevOps. To do that, first do the assessment. Evaluate the current CI/CD setup, including the tools used, pipelines, and the dependencies. Next is planning. Create a migration plan, outline the steps, timelines, and potential risk. Configuration. Recreate repositories in Azure repos. Set up build pipelines in Azure pipelines to replicate existing build process. Configure release pipeline to mirror the deployment steps. Now, the next step would be data migration. Migrate code, artifacts, and configurations to Azure DevOps. Testing. Validate the new setup by running build and release to ensure they work as expected. Cutover. Gradually switch to the new CI/CD system with a rollback plan in case of issues. Moving. Optimization. Fine-tune pipelines for performance and implementation. Best practices. Moving to the next question. How would you handle a situation where a critical production deployment failed in Azure DevOps? So the steps are immediate triage, identify and isolate the issue using pipeline log and error messages, communicate with stakeholders about the failure and provide an estimated resolution time, rollback. If possible, trigger an automated rollback to the last known good state, ensure rollback scripts and procedures are tested and reliable, root cause analysis, RCA. Conduct a detailed root cause analysis to determine why the deployment failed, document findings, and implement corrective actions. Prevention. Update pipeline to include additional validation, test, or approval gates. Review and ensure enhance monitoring and alerting mechanism. Next question. Explain how you would set up a multi-stage pipeline in Azure DevOps for a complex application. First, pipeline design. Define stages for different parts of the pipeline, example build, test, deploy, and use YAML or classic editor to configure the pipeline. Build stage. Compile the application, run unit tests, and produce build artifacts and publish build artifacts to be used in subsequent stages. Test stage. Deploy the build artifacts to a testing environment and then run integration test, UI test, and security scan. After that, deploy stage. Deploy the application to staging environment for user acceptance testing, UAT, and implement approval gates to require manual approval before deploying to production. After that, production stage. Deploy to the production environment with necessary approvals and check and monitor the environment and verify the application is running correctly. Post-production, run post-production test and cleanup tasks and generate and distribute deployment reports to stakeholder. Now we will move to few behavioral questions. The first one, describe a time when you had to troubleshoot a failing pipeline. What was the issue and how did you resolve it? In this, we can take a reference of any of a scenario which we have worked on. So this is a very based on the personal experience. You can provide a detailed account of the issue, the troubleshooting steps you took, and the resolution. Also, try to mention the tools used like logs, debugging steps, or changes made to the pipeline, which will give more confidence to the interviewer. The next one, how do you stay updated with the latest features and best practices in Azure DevOps? Few of them are Microsoft documentations and blogs. Regularly read the official Azure DevOps documentation and Microsoft blogs. Community and forums. Participates in Azure DevOps community and forums. Follow discussion on platforms like Stack Overflow. Training and certifications. Enroll in courses and pursue relevant certification examples are Azure DevOps Engineer experts. User group and conferences. Attend local user groups, meetups, and conferences such as Microsoft Ignite to network and learn from peers. Then, how do you ensure continuous improvement in your DevOps practices? Regular review. Conduct regular reviews of pipelines, process, and tools to identify area of improvement. Feedback loop. Gather feedback from development teams and stakeholders to understand pain points and opportunities. Training and development. Stay updated with the latest features and the best practices through continuous learning and training. Automation. Identify repetitive tasks and automate them to increase efficiency. Metrics and KPIs. Track key performance indicators, KPIs such as deployment frequency, lead time, and failure rate to measure and improve performance. With this, we have came to the end of the video. Hope this would have been useful. All the best for your interview.